In this video, we're going to look at research and development agreements. So we know that collusion between firms is usually frowned upon. So there are regulations against firms colluding on price or quantity. For example, Article 101 of the Treaty of the European Union prohibits inter-firm agreements that distort competition. However, in this article there is an exemption for agreements relating to research and development. So why is this? Why is public policy towards R&D agreements more tolerant than towards other inter-firm agreements? So one reason is that research and development has great benefits for society. Bloom, Shankerman and Van Reenen estimated the return to R&D in the US. They found that the gross social rate of return was about 55%, whereas the gross private rate of return was 21%. So the social return to research and development greatly exceeds the private return, the return to the firms. So this gap is estimated to imply a socially optimal level of R&D that is twice as high as the level of R&D that is actually observed. So anything that might increase the amount of R&D towards the socially optimal amount of R&D would be a good thing. So we have to think about what effects do research and development agreements have on the level of R&D. Do they increase or decrease the level of R&D? So why might an R&D agreement between firms increase the level of R&D that they do? One reason is spillovers. So what are spillovers from R&D? When one firm conducts R&D, it might have benefits for other firms. And these benefits may come because the R&D results of the first firm become public knowledge, or it might be that workers from one firm move to the other firm and take their knowledge with them. We can represent the degree of spillovers by S, where S is a number between 0 and 1. For example, if S equals 1, then £1 of R&D expenditure by firm A benefits firm B as if firm B had also spent £1. If S equals 1, then the outcome of R&D expenditure is a public good, and we know that with public goods we have the free rider problem. So when firm A is choosing how much to invest in R&D, it's ignoring the positive externality on firm B. And since A ignores this positive externality, it will tend to invest too little from society's perspective. So what might be the effect of an R&D agreement? Well, in the presence of spillovers, it will alleviate the free rider problem. So an R&D agreement is just an agreement where two or more firms jointly choose their expenditures on R&D. They might also collaborate more directly, but let's just think of it as now they choose to maximize their joint profit rather than their individual profits. So as an example, to see what the effect is of an R&D agreement, let's think about an example where £1 of expenditure benefits the firm by 60p. Should that firm A, spend that £1? Well, no, that firm should not spend that £1 because the cost is more than the benefit to the firm. What about if they have an R&D agreement? If A and B have an R&D agreement, then it may be that it's worthwhile to spend that £1. It depends on the degree of the spillovers. So let's suppose the spillovers are 1. Then, since the spillover is 1 and £1 of expenditure on R&D benefits each firm by 60p, the expenditure of £1 by firm A will benefit firm B by 60p, and therefore the total benefit to the firms will be £1.20. So because £1.20 is more than 1, it actually makes sense if these two firms have an R&D agreement for them to spend this £1. On the other hand, if the spillovers now are a half, then this expenditure of £1 by firm A only benefits firm B by 30p, and now the joint benefit is 90p, which is less than 1, so it would not be worthwhile for A to spend this £1. So an R&D agreement here alleviates the free rider problem because when the firms are maximizing their joint profit, they've internalized the externality on the other firm of their own investment. And so when there are spillovers, there's going to be a higher level of R&D expenditure, and that means we will get closer to the social optimum. So to illustrate this idea in another way, let's use some symbols and a diagram. So here we have the profit functions of the two firms, pi A and pi B, we have their levels of investment, Ka and Kb. So how do the profit functions depend on Ka and Kb? Since there's a cost to investment and there are benefits, it could be that an increase in Ka decreases or increases firm A's profits. But we know that if there are spillovers, then investment by firm A is going to benefit firm B. So there's a positive effect of an increase in Ka on firm B's profits. And similarly, firm A's profits are increasing in firm B's investment. So these are the positive externalities from R&D. Now, when firm A is choosing how much to invest, it doesn't care about the positive spillover on firm B. It only cares about the effect of changes in Ka on its own profit pi A. However, when they form a research and development agreement, now they're maximizing joint profit. And so now the effect of A's investment on firm B's profit is taken account of when maximizing joint profit, as is the effect of firm B's investment on firm A's profit. We've internalized the externality, and now there's going to be a higher level of investment because the benefit to the firms together is more than the benefit to the firm doing the investment. So what effect is this going to have? So on the diagram here, we have the welfare, and welfare is a function of the investment of firm A and firm B, but here I've just represented it as a function of the total investment. The socially optimal level of investment is at the peak of the welfare function. The level of investment without an R&D agreement is going to be below the socially optimal level. So when they individually maximize, this is going to be their level of investment. The R&D agreement is going to increase their investment and bring them towards the socially optimal level. So the R&D agreement is beneficial to society. Now, they're not going to go all the way to the socially optimal level because there are benefits that accrue to parties other than the firms. So it's not just these two firms doing the investment that are benefiting from the R&D, and because the firms do not take account of that even when they have an agreement, they're going to be still investing less than the socially optimal amount. So an R&D agreement is a good thing when there are spillovers of investment by one firm on the other firm. Now, are R&D agreements always a good idea? Well, the answer is no, they can actually reduce welfare. So to think about why, let's suppose that instead of positive externalities, there are negative externalities. Later we'll look at why there might be negative externalities. When there are negative externalities, then investment by firm A is going to have a negative effect on firm B's profit, and investment by firm B is going to have a negative effect on A's profit. So when they form an R&D agreement and now maximize their joint profit, they're going to invest less because now the negative effect of investment by firm A is going to be taken account of when maximizing the joint profit. So if the level of R&D when the firms maximize individually is less than the socially optimal value, the R&D agreement is going to make things worse. It's going to reduce the level of investment and move the investment away from the socially optimal level. So why might investment by one firm have a negative externality on the other firm? Think about an example where the firms are competing for a patent. Only one of them can gain the patent. The firms are spending money on R&D in order to try and win this fixed prize, the patent. When a firm increases its own expenditure, that is going to increase the probability that it wins the patent. It's going to increase the probability of the patent being awarded to anyone, that is, of the innovation occurring. But it's going to have a negative externality on the other firm because it's going to decrease the probability that the other firm wins the patent. And so for that reason, the R&D agreement is going to reduce the level of investment, and we're going to make things worse. We're going to move further away from the socially optimal level. So inter-firm R&D agreements may be good If there are positive spillovers of R&D of one firm on the other firm, then the inter-firm R&D agreement reduces the free rider problem, increases the level of investment, and moves the firms closer to the socially optimal point. However, there may instead be negative externalities of R&D expenditure by one firm on the other firm, and in that case the agreement will reduce the level of R&D expenditure and cause social welfare to fall. We will look at both these cases in the tutorial using a concrete example. So this is why the policy is more lenient towards agreements about research and development. It can be that the R&D agreements increase social welfare.